What if your own son thought you were irrelevant, while building his career on lessons you once taught his CEO? I'm Marlene Reddick. For years, I stayed quiet, watching my son rise in a world I once helped shape, unseen, uncredited, and slowly erased. But silence has a limit. And mine ended the day I saw a familiar name on a conference flyer. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below, I'd love to hear from you. That morning in Austin, the sun came in soft through the blinds, and the hum of the ceiling fan felt louder than usual. I opened my email, not expecting much, maybe a newsletter or an update from the garden club. But when I saw Joanna Fierce's name after 12 years, something inside me stalled. Just her name, plain and steady, was enough to make old dust rise. I knew then that memory wouldn't let me be still today. Joanna had always been the type to land in a storm with lipstick perfectly in place. We worked together back in the day, consulting firms, late-night pitch decks, flights to nowhere. We hadn't spoken much since I stepped away from the grind. She moved on. I faded out. The email was short, Leadership West 2023. Denver. Declan's keynote. Would be good to see you again. I sat back in my chair, letting the words settle. I hadn't heard Declan's name in years. Not since those months mentoring him, back when he was still all elbows and questions, wide-eyed in a world too quick to spit out the slow. He used to hang on every word I said like it mattered. That part of my life, I'd packed away neat and quiet. Not because it wasn't important, but because it didn't seem to matter anymore, at least not to the people closest to me. These days, my world's smaller. My garden, my books, the sound of cicadas if I leave the windows cracked. I'm 59 now. Been retired for a few years. Not because I had to, but because I got tired of proving myself in rooms that had already made up their minds about me. Adrian, my son, is the only family I have left. He's 32 now, works in tech. Some fancy title at Strivian Technologies here in Austin. He barely has time to call, but when he does, it's all product cycles and agile teams. I nod along, say I'm proud, and mostly keep quiet. The last time we really talked, really tried, we were on Zoom. He was halfway through explaining a new growth strategy, something to do with user conversion, and I suggested they consider licensing rather than scaling up so fast. He cut me off gently, but firmly. Mom, you don't need to worry about all this. It's complicated. Different world now. Just enjoy your free time. I didn't say anything back. Just smiled and let him finish. I knew he wasn't trying to be cruel. Adrian never has been. But there's a way his voice lands when he's trying to protect me from things he thinks I won't understand. As if the years I spent building teams, cleaning up after executives, and launching startups were just quaint stories of another era. Mothers give advice, he said once, but sometimes they don't realize the game has changed. And maybe I let that sink in too deep. Maybe I started believing that what I knew belonged to a world that no longer had space for me. So I stopped offering advice. I stopped sharing. I stopped reminding him that I once mentored people who now run companies he dreams of working for. One of those people was Declan Henshaw. Back then, he was nobody. An MBA student who asked more questions than he answered. He showed up early, stayed late, took notes like they were gold. I remember once he said, "I want to lead like you someday, calm, but firm. No shouting, no ego. Just presence." I never told Adrian about Declan. Not even when I saw Declan's name on Forbes 40 Under 40. I figured, what's the point? He wouldn't have cared. He would have just smiled, nodded, and changed the subject. But now, with Joanna's email blinking in front of me, Declan's name there, clear as glass, something stirred. Not pride. Not even curiosity, exactly. It was something quieter. A pull I couldn't name. I reread the invite. Leadership West 2023. Denver. Declan's keynote. I hovered over the RSVP button. Closed the laptop. Made tea. Came back. Opened it again. I didn't know if I was going because I missed that world, or because I missed the version of myself that lived in it. Maybe I just wanted to be around people who remembered me as someone who built things, who shaped futures. Not just someone who tended roses and read paperback novels with a cup of chamomile. And maybe I wanted to be seen. I never needed a stage. But the truth is, I wasn't sure if my own son even knew who I used to be. He knew the mom. The comfort. The safe place to land. He didn't know the fire. I didn't know if I was going to Denver for the conference or for something else entirely. But I booked the ticket. And I remember thinking, almost sheepishly, as I folded the confirmation email into a printout for my purse. I don't know if I'm going because I'm curious, or because some part of me still wants to be seen. Not by a room of strangers, but by the one person I once thought would always see me clearly. The one I raised. The one I loved more than anything. The one who now calls me only when it fits his calendar. The flight to Denver was uneventful, but I remember watching the clouds out the window, wondering what I was doing. I hadn't been to a professional event in years. I'd donated all my suits, tossed my name tags, and unsubscribed from every newsletter that used the word executive. That chapter of my life had closed cleanly. Or so I thought. At the gate, everyone looked younger. Laptops open, fingers flying. The woman across from me in heels and a beige blazer was on a video call while balancing a protein bar on her knee. I felt invisible, and, oddly, comfortable in it. The hotel was nicer than I expected. Marble floors, a fireplace in the lobby, and staff that smiled too brightly. Joanna was already there, waiting near the front desk with her arms crossed like a retired general ready to critique the troops. "Look at you," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You look exactly the same. Just more peaceful, or maybe more suspicious." I laughed. Bit of both. She didn't change much, still loud, still direct, with that energy that filled a room without trying. After catching up over lukewarm lobby coffee, we rode the elevator up to our rooms. "So, your son's in tech, right?" she asked casually. "What's his name again?" "Adrian." "Funny. Declan just hired someone named Marlene Reddick. Hotshot from Austin. You wouldn't happen to be hiding a genius in your family, would you?" I froze mid-step. "He didn't mention your last name," she added, oblivious. "But I mean, Reddick isn't that common." "Small world, huh?" I smiled tightly. "Yeah. Real small." Inside my room, I stared at the carpet for longer than necessary. Adrian never told me he was joining Declan's company. Not once. Not even in passing. He'd talked about switching teams, sure, but I assumed it was just another lateral move. Apparently, he'd stepped right into a space I once helped build. I opened my phone. Typed, "Hey, just landed. Funny coincidence, I'm attending Leadership West. Declan's keynote." Then I deleted it. What would he say? "Cool? Didn't know you were still into that stuff?" Instead, I put the phone down and walked over to the window. The Denver skyline was clean, sharp, unfamiliar. I used to thrive in cities like this. Places where your name meant something. Where your work spoke before you did. But now, I wasn't sure what I wanted. Recognition? Revenge? Closure? Joanna dragged me to the welcome mixer that evening. A small ballroom filled with name badges and awkward handshakes. I stuck near the wine table, listening more than talking. I caught bits of jargon I once used fluently but now sounded like noise. And then Joanna leaned in and whispered, "Declan's supposed to arrive late. He's meeting with that new guy, Adrian something. From Austin. Ring any bells?" This time, I didn't respond. I just felt it. That old, sharp twist in the chest. Not pain, more like pressure. The way an old injury reminds you it's still there when the weather changes. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to draw lines between people who didn't know there was history underneath their feet. But I stood there thinking, my son now works for the man I helped shape. And neither of them knows the connection. That silence, it felt suddenly loud. Back in my room, I kept thinking about the way Adrian dismissed me the last time we spoke. As if everything I'd done belonged in a shoebox under the bed. But here it was, my past, his present, overlapping in a way I never expected. I wanted to call him. Not to confront him. Just to say, funny coincidence, huh? But that felt too light for something this tangled. So I didn't say anything. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, and let the thought settle. Adrian works for Declan. The mentee has become the boss of the boy who thought I had nothing left to teach. The main hall was brighter than I expected. Natural light poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows, hitting the polished wood floors and bouncing off rows of clean, modern chairs. They'd done a beautiful job designing the space, sleek, understated, expensive without trying too hard. I chose a seat near the back, by the aisle. Easy exit. Old habit. The session started with the usual introductions. Young, sharp-dressed CEOs with fast words and practiced hand gestures. One spoke about metrics, another about pivoting teams. Then came Declan. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly 15 years. His hair had gone from messy to managed, his suit tailored like he belonged in it. But I recognized the pause he took before speaking. He always had that, like he respected silence more than noise. He spoke about mentorship. About shaping companies by shaping people. And then he said, the first person who showed me what leadership really meant didn't do it with titles or speeches. She did it by listening. By expecting more of me than I did of myself. He paused after that, letting the room breathe. But he didn't say my name. I don't know why I thought he would. I sat still, watching him talk about culture and clarity and courage. And all the while, I thought about how much of what he believed came from hours we spent in conference rooms long since torn down. When the panel ended, I stayed seated. My knees had stiffened, and truth be told, I wasn't ready to move yet. That's when I saw him, Adrian. He walked in late for the breakout workshop, wearing a navy jacket I'd never seen before and a look of mild detachment, like he'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't see me. Thank God. I didn't know what I'd say. I turned slightly, enough to keep my face from full view. He sat 2 rows ahead, leaning over to shake hands with someone, probably another rising manager like himself. And for a second, I watched him. Just watched. The way his hand moved when he talked, the way his brow creased slightly when he listened. I saw his father in him then. The quietness under the surface. The kind that feels like distance. I left the session before it ended. That evening, Joanna convinced me to go to the networking dinner. I wore a black sweater and slacks, nothing flashy. Just enough to blend in. The room buzzed with soft laughter, glasses clinking, names exchanged like currency. I stood near the back, pretending to study the dessert table, when I heard Joanna's voice over my shoulder, cheerful and sharp as ever. Well, I'll be damned. 2 Reddicks in the same building and neither one says hello. I turned just in time to see Adrian looking my way, stunned. His eyes bounced between Joanna and me. He blinked. Mom. Joanna laughed, oblivious to the weight of the moment. You two need a photo. The resemblance is uncanny. I managed a smile, small and unsure. Adrian didn't. He nodded once, stiffly, and said, "Can we talk?" Already walking toward the exit. Outside, the air was cool and dry, the city lights making the night feel more open than it was. Adrian stopped by a stone planter, arms crossed. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Not angry, exactly, more unsettled. "I was invited," I said. "By who? Why?" "Joanna. I used to work with her. A long time ago." He let out a quiet breath. "So this is about Declan?" I said nothing. "You knew he was my boss, didn't you?" "No. Not until yesterday." He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. It feels like you came here to prove something." "I didn't." "Then why? Why show up at this event, my event, when you've never come to anything like this before?" I hesitated. "Because it's not your event, Adrian. It's a professional conference. I have a history here, too." He gave a dry, bitter laugh. "Right? The old war stories." That one stung. "I'm not trying to take anything from you," I said quietly. "You don't have to," he replied, sharper now. "But walking into this space, my space, and acting like you still belong here, it feels tone-deaf. Like you don't get that the world moved on." I looked at him. Really looked. "You think I don't know that?" I asked. He didn't answer. And then he said it. The sentence that didn't just cut, it carved. "You might have been something once, Mom. But that was then. The world doesn't need your kind of advice anymore." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't have words, but because something inside me recoiled. Not in shame. In disbelief. It wasn't just what he said, it was how certain he was of it. He believed it. And in that silence, between his certainty and my restraint, I felt something shift. Not rage. Not sadness. Just the sudden weight of being erased by someone you raised. I left the dinner before dessert was served. The clink of silverware and quiet laughter behind me felt like a world I was no longer invited to. Outside, Denver had cooled, the kind of late spring chill that wakes your skin under even the nicest dress. I walked back to the hotel instead of calling a car. My heels struck the pavement in steady rhythm, but something inside me had gone hollow. In my room, I didn't turn on the lights. The city did enough to glow through the wide hotel window, all golden haze and glass towers. I sat down at the small desk, slipped off my shoes, and reached for the old leather-bound notebook I had packed almost by instinct. I hadn't opened it in years, but I knew exactly where to flip. There they were. My old mentoring notes from when Declan Henshaw was still a wiry grad student with too many ideas and not enough grounding. There were printouts with scribbled feedback, diagrams we'd drawn together in sessions, and an email from him, faded ink, but still legible. "You're the first person who's ever told me I was leading from fear, not clarity." I hated hearing it. But thank you. I let my fingers hover over the words. That version of Declan had been all nerves and ego. I remembered how he used to drum his fingers when he was nervous, how his voice pitched up when he was trying to impress. I'd seen the beginnings of a leader in him, and helped coax it out. Not through big speeches. Just small, deliberate truths. Adrian didn't know any of that. Not the mentorship, not the impact, not the long nights I spent preparing people like Declan to enter the world my son now walked so confidently in. That was the ache, not that Adrian had snapped at me earlier, or that he saw me as someone out of touch. It was the way he'd erased the thread between my past and his present, as if none of it had ever existed. As if I had never mattered in the story he now called his career. And yet, I did. He just didn't know it. The next morning came too fast. I had barely slept, turning over conversations in my mind. I went down to the hotel breakfast but didn't eat. Lukewarm coffee in a paper cup was all I could stomach. I was back in my room, scrolling mindlessly through emails, when there was a knock. Joanna's voice came through before I could even speak. "You decent?" I opened the door. She stepped in like she always did, uninvited, confident, brimming with news. She waved her phone in the air. "You're not gonna believe this, Declan's looking for you." I blinked. "Looking for me?" "Yep. Says he's writing a book on leadership. Wants to include you in a chapter he's calling First Mentors. Said you were the first one who told him how dangerous it is to lead from ego. Ring any bells?" I nodded, slowly. He still remembers that? Apparently, word for word. He said it's shaped how he manages his executive team to this day. She grinned. "Wants your permission to quote some of your old emails, if you still have them." I sat down on the edge of the bed, notebook still on the nightstand. Joanna watched me carefully. "That surprise you?" "Not that he remembers," I said. "Just that he's telling the world." She waited, then asked gently, "Adrian doesn't know, does he?" "No." My voice was quieter now. "And if I tell him, it'll feel like I'm pulling rank. Like I've been sitting on this all these years just to show him up." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe he's old enough to finally hear it." I shook my head. "If I hand him this truth now, it'll land like a slap." "Maybe," she said again, this time softer. "But there's a difference between slapping someone and holding up a mirror." I looked at her. She added, "You gave Declan the courage to look inward." "Why is Adrian any different?" "Because he's my son," I almost said. "Because I've spent years trying not to hurt him. Because I traded so much of myself to make sure he had room to grow." But none of those words felt like enough. Or maybe they were just excuses. "You know what scares me the most?" I asked, staring out the window at the sharp light breaking across the rooftops. "What?" "That if I keep quiet, I'm betraying everything I used to stand for. But if I speak, I might lose him." Joanna nodded, her face thoughtful. "You taught a generation how to speak hard truths with grace. Don't forget that. And don't shrink just because it's your own child who needs the lesson." After she left, I sat there alone. The notebook stayed open. I reread Declan's words. I remembered how I used to walk into rooms full of men twice my age and never once doubted I belonged. I had buried that woman for the sake of peace. But now, peace felt like erasure. I spent that morning walking slow, aimless circles around a quiet park near the hotel. The grass was still wet from the sprinklers, soaking through my flats by the second lap. Birds chirped half-heartedly in the trees, and joggers passed me with that glazed look of people moving through routine. I must have looked like one of them, just another woman out to clear her head. But inside, it felt like something was shaking loose. Something old and aching. I hadn't slept much the night before. Adrian's words kept playing back, not loud, but sharp, like static just beneath the surface. The kind of words that don't bruise immediately but leave a mark the next day. "You're not helping by showing up here. This is my world now." And it wasn't just what he said. It was the way he looked at me. Like I'd trespassed into a story he thought he was writing alone. The wind picked up and tugged gently at the collar of my coat. I tucked my hands into my pockets. My fingers found the folded slip of paper still there, Declan's email, the one I'd reread last night until the words etched themselves into my thoughts again. "You told me I was leading from fear." I didn't want to hear it. But I needed to. It had been over a decade. But Declan still remembered. Not just the advice, but the intention behind it. He knew I wasn't trying to control him. I was trying to save him from becoming someone hollow. That was the difference. Adrian hadn't wanted to be saved. He wanted to be seen as untouched, original, self-made. And I, without ever saying a word, had let him believe it. I walked until my calves ached, then made my way back to the hotel. The hallway smelled faintly of room service and floral carpet cleaner. I had just slipped off my shoes when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Declan. Would you consider joining me on stage this afternoon? I've included a chapter about you in the manuscript. I'd love to acknowledge you properly. My thumb hovered over the screen. I typed, I don't think that's necessary. Then paused. I could feel the pull in two directions, one towards staying invisible, the other towards something riskier. Louder. True. Before I could decide, another message arrived. Adrian's attending? I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot. I just want you to know I'm proud. And I'd like the people here to know what you gave me. I put the phone face down and sat in silence. My hands were trembling. Then came the knock. A rhythm I recognized before the door even opened. Hope you're not naked, Joanna called, barging in like she always did. I'm not, I sighed. She walked in with purpose, holding a tablet. Got something for you. Does it bite? She grinned. Depends how honest you are with yourself. She handed me the tablet, already pulled up to a draft of Declan's book. The title of the chapter made my throat close up. The Quiet Force. I read slowly, each word deliberate, like walking barefoot over glass. My first mentor wasn't loud. She didn't lead with titles or flair. She listened so carefully, you didn't want to disappoint her. Marlene Reddick taught me to lead without chasing applause. She saw through my arrogance and called it fear, and she was right. She never asked for credit, but she deserves it. The way I build teams, the way I listen before I act. It all began with her. Every success I've had carries her fingerprint. I blinked fast, willing the tears back. I hadn't cried since Tom died. But this wasn't grief. This was something else, a mix of being seen and suddenly remembering what it felt like to matter. Joanna sat next to me, unusually quiet. He doesn't know any of this, I said. Then maybe he should. I didn't stay quiet because I was weak, I whispered. I wanted Adrian to have the spotlight. I thought I was giving him room to grow. But now I think I gave too much. I stepped back so far I fell out of the frame. Joanna nodded. If I don't speak today, it's not humility. It's absence. She reached over, squeezed my hand. Then don't let yourself disappear. She stood, then turned back with that sly grin. Wear that navy wrap dress. The one that makes you look like you still know how to run a boardroom. I raised an eyebrow. Because you do, she added. When she left, I stayed there a long time. Not thinking. Just breathing. Remembering. I opened my suitcase and reached for the dress. Ran my hand over the fabric. I hadn't worn it in a while, it still held the faint scent of cedar from the back of my closet. The conference room was packed, folding chairs stretching all the way to the back wall, hums of conversation settling into a hush as the next session was announced. The banner on stage read Mentorship and Legacy, and I felt a ripple move through my spine as I found my seat near the side aisle. Declan walked on stage like he'd done it 1,000 times, but I noticed the slight hitch in his shoulders before he reached the microphone. He greeted the room, thanked the organizers, cracked a light joke about Denver traffic, and then he paused. I'd like to start this session a little differently, he said. Because the story I'm about to tell isn't really about me. It's about someone who taught me what real leadership looks like, back when I didn't even know what the word meant. There was a shift in the room, people leaned in. She didn't run companies or chase headlines. She sat across from me at a plastic desk in a borrowed office and asked, What kind of man do you want to be when no one's watching? I've been chasing the answer ever since. He scanned the audience. Marlene Reddick, if you're here today, would you come join me? Everything stopped. Whispers moved like wind across the chairs. And somewhere a few rows behind me, I heard someone murmur, "Is that his mom?" I stood. Slowly, calmly. No rustle of fabric, no theatrical pause. Just my body rising, spine straightening as my feet moved forward. The sound of my heels across that stage floor felt louder than anything Declan had said. I stepped up, took the hand he offered, and turned to face the room. I didn't look for Adrian. I didn't have to. I felt him, the stillness, the disbelief, the sting of being caught off guard. The mic was warm in my hand. I took a breath that came all the way from the years I had tried to stay small. I didn't come here to give a speech, I said. I came here because I've been silent for a long time. Too long. The room was quiet, respectful, unsure. I've spent decades in boardrooms, on planes, in back offices no one ever photographs. I've helped people build things, products, teams, reputations. I've poured my time and energy into others because I believed in their potential. And somewhere along the line, I convinced myself that staying behind the curtain made me stronger. I paused. But silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's just fear. Sometimes it's the belief that your time has passed and the best you can do is not get in the way. I looked out over the heads, into the sea of half-familiar faces. We confuse visibility with relevance. But relevance has never been about noise, it's about value. And I'm standing here because I remembered I still have value. A few people nodded. Some looked stunned. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I handed the mic back to Declan and stepped down, feeling taller than I had in years. Backstage was colder. Industrial lighting, folding chairs, cables taped down. I made it to the far end of the hall before I heard him behind me. "Why would you do that?" I turned. Adrian was there, still in his blazer, still carrying the defensiveness like a second skin. "Do what?" I asked. "That. Get up on stage." "You knew I was in that room." "Yes," I said. "I did." "So what, was that some kind of payback?" "No. That was me remembering I exist." He blinked, caught off guard by the calm in my voice. "I'm not here to embarrass you, Adrian. I didn't say your name. I didn't even speak about you. I spoke about me, for once." His face shifted, confusion softening into something harder to read. "You think I've forgotten who you are?" I smiled sadly. "I don't think you ever really knew." Silence hung between us. "I gave up a lot to raise you," I said. "Not because I regret it, but because I chose it. I chose you. But that doesn't mean I stopped being someone outside of Mom." He didn't interrupt. That alone was something new. "I've watched you build your career, your confidence, your space in the world. And I'm proud of you, Adrian. But I won't keep shrinking so you can grow. That's not growth. That's erasure. No tears. No yelling. Just the truth, out in the air between us." The next morning, the sky over Denver had gone pale and cold. I checked out of the hotel early, wheeling my modest carry-on past the front desk, heels clicking in steady rhythm. My flight wasn't until later that afternoon, but I had every intention of skipping the closing networking brunch. I'd already said what I needed to say. Still, something pulled me back to the event center, maybe curiosity, maybe habit. I figured I'd stop by, thank Declan for his kindness, and slip out quietly. The lobby buzzed with conversations. People gathered in small circles, recapping sessions, exchanging business cards, making promises they might not keep. I spotted Declan near a side table, deep in conversation with two organizers. When he saw me, he excused himself and walked over, that easy grin still sitting comfortably on his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come by," he said, handing me a coffee without asking if I wanted one. "You were phenomenal yesterday." "Thank you," I replied. "But I think one curtain call's enough for me." He chuckled. "Fair." I was serious about what I said, though. "The book's happening. And Strivian's leadership team could use someone like you, again." I smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. "I appreciate that. Truly. But I'm not looking to rejoin the world I already gave my best to. I came here to remember who I was, not to re-enlist." His expression flickered for just a moment, disappointment, maybe, but he nodded. "That makes sense. You're not someone who circles back. You move forward." "I try to," I said. Then I saw him. Adrian stood alone near the far window, staring out, untouched by the motion around him. No coffee in hand. No name tag. No phone as a buffer. Just stillness. His face looked older in that light, or maybe just quieter. I hesitated. Declan noticed. "He's been here a while," he said gently. "Didn't say much to anyone." "I'll go," I told him, but he stepped back. "No. You should talk." I walked over slowly. Each step felt heavier than it should have. When I stopped beside him, he didn't turn right away. Then he spoke, softly, without looking. "I didn't sleep much last night." I waited. "I kept replaying everything," he continued. "That moment on stage, the things you said. I didn't see it coming." "You weren't meant to," I said. Finally, he turned to me. No anger this time. Just something raw. "I owe you an apology. Not just for yesterday. For a lot of things." I didn't answer. He took a breath. "I guess I thought, if I let myself really see what you've done, who you are, I'd always feel like I was chasing you. Like your shadow would be bigger than anything I could become." That stopped me. Not because it surprised me, but because it explained everything. "I don't want to compete with you, Mom," he said. "But I think I've spent years pretending there wasn't anything to compete with." I looked at him, steady and clear. "You have the right to be your own person, Adrian. But you don't get to rewrite my story to make yours feel taller." He nodded, slowly. "I know," he said. "And I'm sorry." There was nothing grand in the moment. No music swelling, no tearful hug. Just quiet understanding. The kind that rebuilds what pride once fractured. He glanced at my bag. "You leaving?" "Soon," I said. "Just wanted to say goodbye." He hesitated. "Will you come to the office sometime? Meet my team?" I thought about it. Then shook my head gently. "No. That's your space. You earned it. You don't need me there, and I don't need to be." His shoulders dropped. Not in defeat, but in recognition. "Declan offered me a consulting role," I added. "Are you going to take it?" I smiled. "No. I didn't come here to reopen doors I've already walked through. I came here to close the right ones, with the handle in my own hand." He didn't argue. As I turned to go, he called after me. "Mom." "Yes. I'm proud of you." I nodded. "Good. Because I'm proud of me too." It had been a week since I returned to Austin. The house was just as I'd left it, quiet, a little dusty around the window sills, the afternoon light stretching across the wood floors like it always had. But it didn't feel the same. I moved slower that first day back, not because I was tired, but because I was noticing things again. The wind chimes near the back door had lost a few notes. The plant near the kitchen window was leaning too far toward the light. My life wasn't loud, but it had always been full. I just hadn't let myself feel it in a long time. I unpacked without ceremony. Hung up the navy wrap dress with more care than it probably deserved. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my hallway cabinet and pulled out a photo frame I hadn't touched in years. The picture was of me, back when I still wore suits that said I belonged at the table. I was standing with 5 men, all of them now successful in one way or another, one of them being Declan. We'd taken the photo after a panel I'd moderated, somewhere in Chicago, sometime in the late 2000s. I used to keep that frame on my bookshelf. But when Adrian moved in with me for a while after college, he'd seen it and said, half joking, kinda showy, huh? I'd laughed and tucked it away. That afternoon, I hung it again, right in the hallway, where you couldn't miss it. The next morning, I was reading on the porch when I heard a knock at the door. Adrian stood there with 2 paper cups from Luna Elm, the little cafe I'd used to take him to when he was younger. He didn't say anything at first. Just handed me a cup and followed me inside. He placed a book on the table, the advance copy of Declan's. A thin yellow post-it stuck out from Chapter 3. Lessons from Marlene Reddick. I traced the edge of the page with my thumb but didn't open it. I don't want to talk too long, Adrian said. I know you're not waiting on anything from me. I just needed to bring this. I looked at him. No tension in his shoulders today. Just a quiet awareness, the kind that comes after a long, hard look in the mirror. He sat across from me and finally spoke. I used to think you stayed quiet because you didn't have anything left to say. But maybe I just didn't want to hear it. Because if I had, I would have had to admit I'd stopped listening a long time ago. I didn't respond right away. He glanced at the book, then back at me. I didn't see it. Not really. Not until I read his words and realized they sounded like yours. Everything I respect in Declan, I've heard before. I just didn't know I was hearing you. Still, I said nothing. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he added. I just wanted you to know, I see you now. I studied his face. The boy I raised was still there, somewhere under the weight of pride and pressure. He'd grown into a man who could build things. Maybe now, he'd also learn how to hold space for others. I placed my hand on the book cover and said, this isn't about me being strong. It's about me finally knowing I don't have to shrink to be kind. He nodded, a little broken, a little lighter. We didn't speak much after that. Just sat there, the two of us, letting the quiet settle in ways it never had before. Later, after he left, I stepped out onto the back patio. The air was soft, the kind that wrapped around you without asking permission. I watered the small rosemary bush growing stubbornly by the fence and watched the breeze ripple across the surface of Lake Travis in the distance. I took a deep breath, not heavy, not sharp. Just full. And I thought to myself, I used to believe silence was sacrifice. That holding back was how you loved people best. But silence, prolonged and unchecked, becomes something else. It becomes the way you disappear piece by piece. Now, I've said what needed to be said. You know, at my age, you don't expect moments of reckoning. You think the big turns in life are behind you. But sometimes, it's not about turning, it's about standing still long enough to remember who you are. I didn't need a spotlight. I just needed to stop disappearing from my own story. And maybe that's something we all face, sooner or later, how much of ourselves we've tucked away, just to keep the peace. Have you ever done that? Stepped aside so quietly that even you forgot where you used to stand? If this story stirred something in you, I hope you'll sit with it a while. And if you'd like to walk with me through another story someday, I'd be glad to have you along.